August 4th, 1944. Supreme Headquarters Allied Expeditionary Force, Versailles, France. General Dwight D. Eisenhower stands at his desk, coffee cup in hand, reviewing routine morning reports. The Normandy campaign is grinding forward slowly, painfully, exactly as predicted. Then an officer rushes in holding a message flimsy. "Sir, urgent from Third Army." Eisenhower glances up, mildly annoyed. Patton's army has only been activated for a week. What could possibly be urgent? He takes the message and begins reading. His eyes scan the first line. 4th Armored Division has secured Rennes. He pauses. Rennes? That's over 100 miles from where 3rd Army started. He reads the next line. 6th Armored Division approaching Brest. Infantry divisions controlling all major roads in eastern Brittany. His hand freezes. The coffee cup stops halfway to his lips. Request further orders. Eisenhower reads the message again. Then a third time. His expression shifts from routine boredom to complete disbelief. He walks slowly to the large map table dominating the operations room. His staff looks up, sensing something wrong. Eisenhower's finger traces the route from Avranches, where 3rd Army broke through, to Rennes, to Brest, to the positions now reported. Over 100 miles, through contested enemy territory, in 4 days. That's impossible, he says quietly. Sir, the intelligence officer steps forward. We've confirmed the positions 3 times. 3rd Army is exactly where they report. Eisenhower stares at the map. He sets down his coffee cup carefully, as if afraid he might drop it. He leans over the map table, both hands flat on the surface, studying the impossible positions marked in blue. General Bradley approaches. Sir? Eisenhower doesn't look up. He just shakes his head slowly, and then he says 5 words that will define George Patton's entire military career. Good God, he's already there. But how did Patton get there? To understand that, we need to go back 5 days. August 1st, 1944. The same headquarters, the same map room, but a very different mood. Eisenhower stands over the map table surrounded by his senior staff. British officers, American officers, Canadian officers, all staring at the same problem. Normandy. For 2 months, Allied forces have been grinding through the Norman hedgerows, 2 months of brutal, exhausting combat. Progress is measured in yards, not miles. Every field is a fortress. Every hedgerow conceals German machine guns. Casualties are mounting. The Germans are defending brilliantly, and the Allied advance has slowed to a crawl. We need a breakthrough, Eisenhower says. Something decisive. Something that gets us out of this bottleneck and into open country. General Omar Bradley points to a section of the map. Operation Cobra, sir. We concentrate our heavy bombers here, blow a massive hole in the German lines, then push through with armored divisions. It's aggressive, it's risky, but it could work. How long will it take to exploit the breakthrough? Eisenhower asks. Bradley considers. If we're lucky, a week to advance 50 miles, maybe 2 weeks to secure the Brittany Peninsula. Eisenhower nods slowly. It's not fast, but it's progress, at least it's movement. Then a British liaison officer enters the room. Sir, I have an urgent message from 3rd Army headquarters. Eisenhower looks up. 3rd Army, George Patton's army, has just been activated. They're supposed to move through the gap created by 1st Army and exploit the breakthrough. Standard doctrine, standard procedure. What does Patton want now? Eisenhower asks, already sounding tired. The officer hands him the message. Eisenhower reads it once. His eyebrows rise. He reads it again, slower this time. His expression shifts from concentration to disbelief. He can't be serious. Bradley moves closer. Sir? Eisenhower reads aloud. 3rd Army advancing south toward Brittany. Will secure Peninsula within 4 days, then pivot east toward Paris. Request permission to continue advance as far as fuel supplies allow. The room goes silent. Bradley looks shocked. 4 days? The Brittany Peninsula is over 100 miles of contested territory with German forces dug in throughout. I know how far it is, Eisenhower says quietly. Sir, that's impossible, an American colonel says. No army can move that fast. The logistics alone would be a nightmare. Supply lines stretched over 100 miles, fuel trucks trying to keep up with advancing armor, ammunition convoys racing to catch forward units. Eisenhower holds up a hand for silence. He walks to the phone on his desk. Get me 3rd Army headquarters. I need to speak with General Patton immediately. The room waits. 2 minutes pass, then Patton's voice crackles over the line, sharp and confident. "This is Patton." "George," Eisenhower says, "I'm looking at your proposed movement plan. You're planning to advance 100 miles in 4 days." "That's correct, sir." "Through enemy territory with limited fuel against German resistance." "Also correct." "George, that's not," Patton interrupts. "Sir, the Germans are in chaos. Their lines are collapsing. Operation Cobra is going to shatter their entire defensive structure. If we move fast, I mean genuinely fast, we can be in Brittany before they even realize we've broken through. But only if we move now." The argument continues for another 10 minutes. Patton makes his case passionately, desperately, pointing out every strategic reason why Third Army should get fuel priority. The Germans are broken in his sector. The Rhine is within reach. The war could be over by Christmas. Eisenhower listens, considers, weighs the options. Montgomery's operation in the North has political implications. British forces need victories. Allied unity requires balanced support. And there are legitimate concerns about Patton's exposed flanks. Finally, Eisenhower makes the decision that will be debated by historians for decades. "I'm giving fuel priority to Montgomery's operation," he says. "Market Garden is going forward. I'm sorry, George, but that's my final decision." The line goes silent for several seconds. Then Patton speaks, his voice flat, emotionless. "Understood, sir. Third Army will hold current positions." The phone clicks dead. Patton sits in his command tent, alone, staring at the maps spread before him. Maps showing Third Army positions stretching across France. Maps showing the German border just 60 miles away. Maps showing the Rhine River, that final barrier into Germany's heartland, tantalizingly close. He picks up a pen and opens his personal diary. The entry he writes is bitter, frustrated, heavy with the weight of opportunity lost. "We could have ended this war by Christmas. We had the Germans on the run, their armies shattered, their defenses collapsing, their command structure in chaos. All we needed was fuel. Just fuel. But instead, we stopped. And now they'll have time to rebuild. Time to establish new defensive lines. Time to bring up reinforcements. This delay will cost thousands of lives. Thousands of American soldiers who will die in battles that didn't have to be fought, in a war that could have been over months earlier." He sets down the pen and looks at the map one more time. 60 miles from the Rhine. So close. September 1944. Third Army sits stationary along the German border. Patton's soldiers, the men who've advanced over 600 miles in 30 days, who've liberated hundreds of French towns, who've destroyed dozens of German divisions, now sit idle. They can literally see German positions in the DI. Stance. Some forward observation posts can see across the border into Germany itself. "It's like standing at the finish line and not being allowed to cross," one officer complains to his men. "We fought all the way across France, and now we're stuck here because someone decided to give our fuel to armies that aren't even moving." Patton visits his forward units, trying to keep morale up, trying to maintain the aggressive spirit that carried them this far. "We'll get fuel," he promises them, "and when we do, we're going all the way to Berlin. We're going to finish what we started." His men believe him because Patton has never lied to them. But privately, Patton knows the truth. The opportunity has passed. The window closed. After the war, military historians will analyze Third Army's August advance with a mix of admiration and disbelief. The numbers they compile are staggering, almost unbelievable. Distance covered, over 600 miles in 30 days. That's 20 miles per day average, sustained for an entire month through contested territory. Enemy prisoners taken, over 100,000 German soldiers captured or forced to surrender. Towns and cities liberated. Hundreds of French communities freed from German occupation. German divisions disrupted or destroyed. Dozens of enemy units rendered combat ineffective. Allied casualties, remarkably low because the speed of advance prevented Germans from organizing effective resistance. One military analysis concludes simply, Patton's advance across France represents one of the fastest sustained military advances in recorded history. Faster than Hannibal crossing the Alps. Faster than Napoleon's march to Moscow. Faster than any mechanized campaign in the modern era. Another historian notes that German forces couldn't defend against Patton because they couldn't predict where he would be. By the time German intelligence IED his position and German commanders formulated a response, Patton had already moved somewhere else. He was always ahead of the enemy's decision-making cycle. Third military scholar observed something fundamental about Patton's approach. He understood that in mobile warfare, speed is its own form of protection. A slow-moving army is vulnerable to counterattack because the enemy has time to organize, time to position forces, time to prepare defenses. But a fast-moving army gets behind enemy lines before the enemy can react. Speed creates confusion, and confusion creates opportunity. German generals interviewed after the war confirmed this assessment with remarkable honesty. Patton was our nightmare. Field Marshal Gerd von Rundstedt admits in post-war interrogations, "We could handle Montgomery." He was predictable, methodical, careful. We knew what he would do because he followed doctrine. But Patton, he appeared where he shouldn't be, moved faster than should be possible, attacked when we expected him to defend. Fighting him was like fighting a ghost. You could never pin him down. August 4th, 1944. We return to where this story began. Eisenhower standing over a map, staring at position markers that shouldn't exist where they are. "Good God," he says quietly, "he's already there." 5 simple words that sum up Patton's entire career. The general who was always ahead of schedule, ahead of expectations, ahead of what anyone thought possible. The man who moved 100 miles in 4 days when others predicted 2 weeks, who crossed France in 3 weeks when others planned for 3 months, who reached the German border while other armies were still fighting in Normandy. How did he do it, people ask then. People ask now. The answer is complicated. Aggressive leadership, brilliant tactics, improvised logistics, sheer audacity, absolute refusal to accept limitations. But maybe. The simplest answer is this. Patton refused to believe that impossible meant impossible. When told an advance couldn't be done that fast, he did it anyway. When told supply lines couldn't support such speed, he found a way. When told to slow down and consolidate, he sped up instead. Good God, he's already there. Not just surprise, not just shock, but admiration, frustration, disbelief, and respect, all compressed into 5 words. It was Eisenhower recognizing that Patton had done something no military planner thought possible, and he'd done it so fast that even his own commanders couldn't keep up. In August 1944, while other armies measured progress in miles per day, Patton measured progress in miles per hour, and he proved that in war, speed isn't just an advantage. Sometimes speed is everything. Good God, he's already there. 5 words that define George Patton. The general who was always somewhere he shouldn't be, doing something he wasn't supposed to be able to do, winning battles that doctrine said couldn't be won that way. That's the story of the man who moved 100 miles in 48 hours and changed the course of World War II. Only if we don't give them time to recover. Eisenhower looks at Bradley, who is shaking his head skeptically. "George, even if you could move that fast, and that's a big if, your supply lines won't keep up. You'll run out of fuel halfway there." "Then we'll improvise," Patton says confidently. "Sir, we have maybe a 48-hour window where the Germans are completely disorganized. If we wait for perfect logistics, we lose that window. The Germans regroup, they establish new defensive lines, and we're back to grinding through hedgerows for another 2 months. Give me permission to advance. I'll worry about supplies later." Eisenhower closes his eyes. Every military doctrine he's ever studied says you don't outrun your supply lines. You don't advance faster than your logistics can support. You consolidate, you organize, then you advance methodically. But Patton has never followed doctrine, and somehow, impossibly, Patton keeps winning. "All right, George," Eisenhower says finally, "you have permission to advance. But if you run out of fuel and get stuck deep in enemy territory, I won't," Patton interrupts. "Third Army out." The line goes dead. Bradley stares at Eisenhower. "Sir, he's going to overextend himself. He's going to run out of fuel and leave his entire army stranded deep behind what's left of German lines. It'll be a disaster." Eisenhower stares at the map for a long moment. "Maybe," he says quietly, "or maybe he'll do something no one thought possible." That conversation happened 5 days ago. Now Eisenhower stands over the same map, staring at proof that Patton did exactly what he said he would do. July 25, 1944. Operation Cobra begins. Over 1,500 heavy bombers pound German positions near St. Lo. The earth itself seems to explode. Entire German units are obliterated. Buildings collapse. Trees are shredded. The German defensive line simply ceases to exist. American First Army surges forward through the gap. Behind them, Third Army activates under Patton's command. Most armies would pause at this moment, consolidate the breakthrough, organize supply lines, bring up reserves, establish proper command structures. Standard procedure. Textbook tactics. Patton does none of this. He attacks immediately with everything he has. Keep moving, he orders his division commanders. Don't stop for anything. If you encounter resistance, bypass it. If you run out of fuel, siphon it from captured German vehicles. If you run out of ammunition, use captured German ammunition. Just keep moving forward. His tank commanders are stunned by the pace. They advance 20 miles the first day, 30 miles the second day, 40 miles the third day. These aren't numbers, these are miracles. Modern armies don't move this fast. Mechanized divisions with tanks and trucks and supply columns don't cover 40 miles in a single day through contested territory. But Third Army does. German forces, already reeling from Operation Cobra, simply cannot respond. They're trying to establish defensive positions, trying to figure out where the Americans are, trying to organize a coherent response. But by the time German commanders identify where Third Army is located, Patton has already moved past that position. He's already 10 miles further down the road, already attacking their rear areas, already cutting their supply lines. Where is Patton? Becomes the most urgent question in German headquarters. Nobody knows. Not with certainty. By the time reconnaissance reports come in, they're already outdated. Patton is moving too fast to track. July 30th. Third Army approaches Avranches, a critical town controlling the only good road into Brittany. If the Germans can hold Avranches, they can bottle up the entire American advance. Narrow roads, limited bridges, defensible terrain. It's a perfect place to stop an attacking army. German commanders are rushing reinforcements toward Avranches. If they can get there first, if they can establish a defensive line, they might contain this breakthrough. Patton doesn't give them time. Third Army tanks reach Avranches before German reinforcements arrive. The town falls within hours. Light resistance, scattered defenders, nothing organized. Brittany is open, Patton tells his staff. We're going through immediately. Sir, his chief of staff says carefully, shouldn't we consolidate our position? Bring up supply units? Let the infantry catch up to the armor? Standard doctrine would be to... No, Patton snaps. Standard doctrine is how you fight slow wars. We consolidate. And the Germans get time to organize. We go now while they're still confused. His 4th Armoured Division races into Brittany. 6th Armoured Division follows close behind. Infantry divisions pour through the narrow gap at Avranches. Within 48 hours, 3 entire divisions are racing across Brittany, spreading out, advancing on multiple axes, moving faster than anyone thought possible. Back at Supreme Headquarters, intelligence officers are updating the map with Third Army positions. They keep stopping, double-checking their information, because the positions don't make sense. This can't be accurate, a British officer says, pointing at the map. These position markers must be wrong. Third Army can't possibly be this far forward already. They were at Avranches yesterday. I've confirmed it 3 times, the intelligence officer replies. I've checked with First Army, with aerial reconnaissance, with radio intercepts. Patton is exactly where the map shows him. And according to the latest reports, he's still moving, still advancing, still pushing deeper into Brittany. The British officer shakes his head. Impossible. But the map doesn't lie. The blue arrows representing Third Army stretch deep into territory that should still be contested, should still be defended, should still be German-controlled. August 3rd, 1944. Third Army headquarters somewhere in Brittany. Patton's quartermaster appears in the command tent looking worried. Sir, we have a problem. Patton glances up from the map he's studying. What kind of problem? Fuel, sir. We're running critically low. The supply trucks can't keep up with the advance. We're moving faster than the logistics chain can support. At current, consumption rates will be completely out of fuel in 36 hours. Most commanders would see this as a crisis requiring an immediate halt. Consolidate positions, wait for supplies, establish proper logistics. Patton doesn't even hesitate. Then we make the fuel last 36 hours. After that, we capture German fuel depots and use their fuel. The quartermaster blinks. Sir, that's not exactly standard procedure. I don't care about standard procedure, Patton says. This is creative logistics. The Germans have fuel scattered all over Brittany. We'll take it from them. In the meantime, reduce fuel allocations to all non-combat vehicles. Every single gallon goes to tanks and fighting vehicles. Everything else walks. Sir, the headquarters staff vehicles, the supply trucks, then they can damn well learn to walk, Patton barks. This army is going to keep moving even if I have to push the tanks myself. Do you understand me? Yes, sir. Good. Now get out there and make it happen. Patton issues immediate orders. All captured German vehicles will be used for supply transport. Fuel will be salvaged from destroyed German equipment, from abandoned trucks, from anything with an engine. Non-essential vehicles will be stripped of fuel and left behind. Officers who aren't in combat positions will walk. It's logistics by improvisation, by desperation, by sheer audacity. It shouldn't work. Every military manual says it shouldn't work, but somehow, impossibly, it does. Meanwhile, at Supreme Headquarters, the morning situation report arrives. An intelligence officer begins marking Third Army positions on the master map. He places a marker at Rennes, then another at Vannes, then another approaching Lorient. He steps back and stares. Sir, he calls to his superior. You need to see this. The senior officer walks over. What am I looking at? Third Army positions as of 0600 this morning. The senior officer studies the map. His expression changes. When were these positions confirmed? Within the last 2 hours, sir. That's over 100 miles from where they started. In lay. SS than a week. I know, sir. How? How is Patton moving this fast? Nobody has an answer. The divisions are supposed to advance 10, maybe 15 miles per day in good conditions. Patton is averaging 30 miles per day through contested enemy territory with limited supplies. It defies every principle of military logistics. Another officer joins them at the map. Patton's going to run out of fuel. He has to. You can't sustain an advance like this without proper supply lines. He'll grind to a halt any day now. But Patton doesn't halt. August 4th arrives. The map is updated again. 4th Armoured Division has secured Rennes. 6th Armoured Division is approaching Brest. Infantry divisions control all major roads in eastern Brittany. The positions are confirmed, reconfirmed, triple-checked. They're accurate. An officer is dispatched to inform Eisenhower. He walks quickly to the Supreme Commander's office, message in hand. Sir, urgent from Third Army. Eisenhower takes the message. He reads it once, twice, 3 times. Then he walks to the map room, coffee cup in hand, and stares at the impossible blue arrows stretching across Brittany. That's when he says it. Good God, he's already there. Bradley appears beside him. Sir? Eisenhower points at the map. We expected this to take 2 weeks. Minimum. He did it in 4 days. How? How did he move an entire army 100 miles in 4 days? Bradley has no answer. Nobody does. Later that afternoon, Eisenhower sends a message to Patton. Congratulations on reaching objectives ahead of schedule. Remarkable achievement. However, you are now critically low on fuel. Recommend consolidating positions until supply lines catch up. Patton's response arrives within an hour. Acknowledge fuel shortage. However, German positions in Lorient and Saint-Nazaire still unoccupied. Intend to secure both before Germans can reinforce. Will worry about fuel. Eisenhower reads the message and laughs. Not a happy laugh, but a tired, incredulous laugh of a man watching someone defy every rule of warfare and somehow succeed. He's out of fuel and he wants to keep attacking, Eisenhower says to Bradley. Should we order him to stop, sir? Bradley asks carefully. Eisenhower considers this for a long moment. By every rule of military logistics, by every principle of organized warfare, he should order Patton to halt immediately. Consolidate positions, establish proper supply lines, wait for the rest of the army to catch up. That's what doctrine demands. That's what every manual recommends. But Patton is winning. Winning faster than anyone thought possible. Winning in ways that rewrite the textbooks. No, Eisenhower says finally. Let him keep going. But make sure every available fuel truck is directed to Third Army. Whatever Patton needs, he gets absolute priority. We're going to support this madness and see where it leads. The order goes out immediately. Every fuel convoy in France is redirected toward Third Army. Trucks that were heading to other units are turned around. Supply depots are emptied. Fuel becomes Third Army's lifeline, and Eisenhower makes sure that lifeline stays open. Meanwhile, in German headquarters, panic is setting in. August 5, 1944, General Paul Hauser, commander of German 7th Army, stares at intelligence reports with mounting alarm. An aide stands nervously nearby. Patton's Third Army has advanced over 100 miles in 4 days, the aide reports. They've captured Rennes, they're approaching Brest, they control most of eastern Brittany. Hauser looks up sharply. That's not possible. No army can move that fast through contested territory. We have defensive positions, we have garrisons, we have... The aide interrupts gently. Sir, most of our positions reported being bypassed. Third Army didn't attack. Our strong points. They went around them. By the time our garrisons realized Americans had passed, it was too late to respond. Hauser sits heavily in his chair. If Patton is in Brittany, our entire western flank is exposed. He could pivot east at any moment and be behind our main defensive lines within days. What are your orders, sir? Hauser has no good options. He doesn't have enough forces to defend everywhere. Patton is moving too fast for conventional defense. Every time Hauser tries to establish a defensive line, Patton has already moved past it. Fall back, Hauser says finally, his voice defeated. Establish new defensive positions further east. We can't stop Patton's advance. We can only try to contain it and hope he runs out of fuel before he gets too far. It's a tacit admission of defeat. Germany has lost the initiative. They're no longer attacking, no longer defending fixed positions. They're simply reacting to Patton, always one step behind, always trying to catch up to an army that moves faster than military theory says is possible. The order to retreat spreads through German units in western France. Pull back, abandon positions, establish new lines further east. It's chaos. Units that were preparing to defend suddenly receive orders to withdraw. Supplies are abandoned. Equipment is left behind. The entire German defensive structure in western France begins to collapse, not because of overwhelming force, but because of speed. Patton is moving so fast that German commanders can't coordinate a response. By the time they identify his position and plan a counter-move, he's already somewhere else. Back at Third Army headquarters, Patton studies his maps with satisfaction. His divisions are spread across Brittany like fingers reaching into enemy territory. 4th Armoured here, 6th Armoured there, infantry divisions securing roads and towns. Sir, his chief of S, Taff says. The Germans are retreating all along the line. They're falling back toward the Seine River. Good, Patton says. Then we won't give them time to establish new positions. He turns to his operations officer. How much fuel do we have? Enough for maybe 2 more days of operations at current pace, sir. 2 days. Patton studies the map. In 2 days we could be at the Seine. In a week, we could be at the German border. August 6, 1944. Patton makes a decision that shocks even his own staff. Having secured most of Brittany in less than a week, he does something completely unexpected. He pivots. Instead of continuing west to capture the remaining ports in Brittany, instead of consolidating his positions, instead of doing anything conventional, Patton turns his entire army 90 degrees, from west to east, toward Paris, toward the Seine River, toward Germany itself. Sir, his staff officers protest, standing around the map table. We haven't secured Brest. We haven't taken Lorient or Saint-Nazaire. Those are major ports. We need those ports for supplies. Ports don't matter if we end the war, Patton interrupts sharply. Brest will still be there in a month. Paris matters. The Seine matters. Germany matters. We're going east and we're going now. But sir, turning an entire army 90 degrees while it's in motion, the logistics are... I don't care about the logistics, Patton says. Make it work. That's what staff officers do. They make impossible things work. Now get moving. In less than 48 hours, Third Army begins one of the most complex military maneuvers of the war. 4 entire corps, over 200,000 men, thousands of vehicles, hundreds of tanks, all changing direction simultaneously. Turning 90 degrees from a westward advance to an eastward drive. It should cause chaos. Traffic jams on narrow French roads, supply failures as convoys go to the wrong. Locations. Units losing contact with headquarters. Command structures breaking down. But Patton's staff makes it work through sheer determination and improvisation. Division commanders receive new orders and execute immediately. Tank columns reverse course on country roads. Supply convoys are redirected mid-journey. Artillery units displace and move east. Infantry divisions march through the night to reach new positions. By August 10th, the pivot is complete. Third Army, which 4 days ago was racing west into Brittany, is now surging east toward Le Mans. The German High Command is utterly confused. Where is Patton going? They ask desperately. West toward the ports? South toward the Spanish border? East toward Paris? Nobody knows because Patton keeps changing direction faster than German intelligence can track. Third Army reaches Le Mans, captures it with minimal resistance, then continues east toward the Seine River, then toward Chartres, then toward Orléans. Each day brings new advances, new captured towns, new German units bypassed or surrounded. How far can we go? Patton asks his logistics officer during a late-night planning session. The logistics officer, exhausted from days of improvising supply solutions, hesitates. Sir, we're already beyond sustainable supply range. Our fuel trucks are running non-stop. Our supply lines are stretched dangerously thin. I didn't ask if it's sustainable, Patton says, leaning forward intensely. I asked how far we can go, if we strip every non-essential vehicle, if we capture German fuel depots, if we requisition civilian vehicles, if every single truck runs 24 hours a day without stopping, how far? The logistics officer studies his maps and calculations. If everything goes perfectly, if we get lucky with captured supplies, if the Germans keep retreating, maybe to the German border, maybe, then that's where we're going. Patton says with finality, "Get it done." His staff exchanges glances. The German border is over 300 miles away. No army has advanced 300 miles in a single campaign since Napoleon. But they've learned not to say impossible around Patton. "Yes, sir," the logistics officer says. "We'll make it work." And somehow, impossibly, they do. Third Army keeps moving east, 20 miles per day, 30 miles per day, sometimes 40 miles in a single day. The blue arrows on Eisenhower's map stretch further and further across France, reaching toward the German border like fingers grasping for the enemy's throat. August 12, 1944. Supreme Headquarters. Eisenhower faces the most difficult command decision of the campaign. Patton's Third Army is advancing so fast, so far, so aggressively that it's threatening to outrun the entire Allied strategy. Bradley enters with the latest situation report. "Sir, Patton is almost at the Seine River. If he crosses, he'll be 75 miles ahead of everyone else. His flanks will be completely exposed. Any German counterattack could cut him off." Eisenhower studies the map. The blue arrows representing Third Army stretch far beyond the red arrows of other Allied units. Patton is alone, exposed, vulnerable. "What does Patton say about this?" Eisenhower asks. Bradley hands him a message. He says a good offense is better than a perfect defense. He wants to keep going. "Of course he does," Eisenhower mutters. A phone rings. It's Field Marshal Bernard Montgomery calling from British Second Army headquarters. His voice comes through angry, clipped, precise. "Eisenhower, this is madness. Patton is violating every principle of organized warfare. His supply lines are stretched to breaking. His flanks are exposed. One German counterattack and Third Army could be cut off and destroyed. We could lose an entire army." "Monty has a point," Bradley admits quietly. "Patton is taking enormous risks. Every rule of warfare says an army that advances too far, too fast, becomes vulnerable." Eisenhower picks up the phone to call Patton directly. The connection crackles. "George," Eisenhower says, "you're 60 miles ahead of schedule. You're outrunning your supplies. You're exposed on both flanks. Every rule of warfare says you should stop, consolidate, and wait for the rest of the army to catch up. Give me one good reason why I shouldn't order you to halt immediately." There's a pause. Then Patton's voice comes through, calm and confident. "Because the Germans are broken, sir, shattered. Their command structure is in chaos. Their supply lines are collapsing. Their defensive positions are abandoned. If we give them time to recover, even a week, even a few days, they'll rebuild their defenses and will be fighting for every mile again. But if we keep pushing now, right now while they're in chaos, we can be in Germany before they recover. We can cross the Rhine. We can end this war months earlier, maybe a year earlier. At what cost?" Eisenhower challenges. "If you overextend and get cut off, you could lose your entire army. 30,000 men, thousands of vehicles, hundreds of tanks. Are you willing to risk that?" There's another pause. Then Patton speaks, and his words carry absolute conviction. Risk is part of war, sir. The question isn't whether there's risk. The question is whether we're willing to accept tactical risk for strategic gain. I'm not asking for unlimited freedom. I'm asking for permission to exploit an opportunity that might not come again. Eisenhower closes his eyes. Montgomery is right that the risks are enormous. Bradley is right that conventional doctrine says Patton should stop. Every military manual, every staff college lesson, every historical precedent says you don't advance this far this fast. But Patton is also right. The opportunity exists. The Germans are in chaos, and opportunities like this don't come twice. George, Eisenhower says finally, I'm not ordering you to stop, but I'm also not giving you unlimited freedom. You can advance as far as fuel allows. But the moment, and I mean the exact moment, you can't sustain your position, you halt and consolidate. Understood? Understood, sir. The line goes dead. Bradley looks at Eisenhower. Sir, did you just give Patton permission to advance as far as he wants? No, Eisenhower says. I gave him permission to advance until he runs out of fuel. According to our logistics officers, that should happen in about 3 days. Then we'll see if Patton can work another miracle. August 19th, 1944. 7 days later. Third Army reaches the Seine River. German forces are attempting to establish defensive positions on the far bank. It's a strong defensive position. A major river, good fields of fire, time to dig in. Most armies would pause, bring up artillery, prepare a set-piece river crossing. Patton doesn't pause. His engineers improvise crossings using whatever materials they can find. Captured German pontoon bridges, requisitioned civilian boats, shallow fording points discovered by reconnaissance units. His tanks cross at dawn while German defenders are still organizing. His infantry follows in anything that floats. Within 36 hours, major elements of Third Army are across the Seine River, one of France's most significant natural barriers. At German headquarters, a commander receives the report and stares in disbelief. Impossible, he mutters. Patton can't be across the Seine already. We just confirmed he was 50 miles away 2 days ago. That was 2 days ago, his aide says quietly. Apparently he moved 50 miles in 48 hours. The commander's hand trembles slightly as he marks the new position on his map. He moved 50 mil. Yes, and crossed a major river in 2 days. How do we fight an enemy who moves like that? There's no answer. At Supreme Headquarters, when confirmation arrives that Third Army has crossed the Seine, Eisenhower calls an emergency staff meeting. He stands at the map table, pointer in hand, tracing Patton's route. Gentlemen, he begins, Third Army has crossed the Seine River on August 19th. He pauses, letting that sink in. Our original operational timeline predicted Third Army would reach the Seine by mid-September. That was our estimate, 6 weeks after the Normandy breakout. Bradley nods confirmation. That was the plan, sir, based on historical advance rates, logistical constraints, expected German resistance. Eisenhower continues. Patton reached the Seine on August 19th. That's 4 weeks ahead of schedule. 4 weeks. The room goes completely silent. An officer in the back does quick mental math and looks shocked. 4 weeks ahead, Eisenhower repeats. That means we're 4 weeks closer to ending this war. 4 weeks fewer casualties, 4 weeks less destruction. 4 weeks of suffering avoided. Thousands of lives saved because one general refused to accept that impossible meant impossible. He looks around the room. I didn't think it was possible. I thought Patton was being reckless, overly aggressive, dangerously optimistic. But George proved me wrong. He proved all of us wrong. But even as Eisenhower speaks those words, even as he acknowledges Patton's achievement, Third Army is facing its worst crisis yet. August 25th, 1944. Third Army Headquarters. Patton's worst nightmare is becoming reality. His army is grinding to a halt, not from German resistance, but from something far more mundane and far more devastating. Lack of fuel. Sir, the quartermaster reports, we're completely out. No fuel reserves, no emergency supplies, nothing. Every tank, every truck, every V-high. Clee is sitting stationary because there's no fuel to put in them. How long? Patton demands, his voice tight with barely controlled fury. Until supply trucks arrive from rear areas, maybe 3 days, maybe a week. It depends on allocation priorities and... A week? Patton explodes. In a week, the Germans will rebuild their defenses. We're sitting on the German border. I can see Germany from our forward positions. We could be across the Rhine in 3 days if we had fuel. But we're stuck here, stationary, helpless, because we don't have gasoline. He slams his fist on the map table. This is unacceptable. He immediately calls Eisenhower. The phone conversation is tense from the first word. Sir, I need fuel. Every available gallon you can spare. Third Army is sitting on the German border, and we can't move. I know, George, Eisenhower begins, but fuel is limited. We have to prioritize. Montgomery is sitting still. Patton interrupts, his voice rising. The British Second Army is consolidating positions. They're not advancing. They're not exploiting opportunities. Meanwhile, I'm 60 miles from the Rhine River. Give me the fuel meant for Montgomery and I can be across the Rhine in 3 days. We can be in the heart of Germany before September. George, I can't just, sir, we have a chance to end this war in 1944. Before winter, before the Germans have time to regroup and establish new defensive lines. But only if we move now.